Photocopies, cookie cutters, tracing paper. Now, these are all things that we use to duplicate something else. Duplication is simply a process of making a direct copy of something. Not just a similar copy, but an exact copy. Now, duplication is not always a bad thing. Making copies of a lost puppy flyer to put up around the neighborhood, or copies of the agenda for the company board meeting. We duplicate stuff all the time. But what about reproductions? Now, that's different than a copy. That's making something new that looks just like the original, or at least similar to the original. You see that reproduction is something completely different. So what about reproductions in our creative endeavors? Reproduction is a tool that every single person uses at some level. That is one of the main ways we learn how to do just about anything. As babies, we reproduce the sounds we hear, and through that, we learn how to speak. As we get a little older, we watch our parents do a thing, change a tire, cook a meal, play a game, and then we try to reproduce the steps it took to do that thing to learn to do it for ourselves. Even as adults, we get to a job and we're told to reproduce the actions of the person training us in order to do a task consistently in that job. See, reproduction is a major part of how we learn to do things in this life. So I think we can all agree that from this standpoint, we all rely on reproduction of other people's work in order to know what we know and do what we do. And that is an undeniable fact. It's easy to see. But what I'm really talking about is reproduction in creative works, specifically artistically creative works. And this is where the artistically creative people out there will start to get a little testy, but hold on, let's talk this through. Now, as I'm thinking about it, and again, I am not the final word on any of this, but two questions do pop into my mind. The first question is it possible to be truly 100% innovative without having drawn on something else? In other words, can I create something without reproducing some portion of it from something I have seen or heard before? I'd argue that it is impossible to achieve 100% innovation in any creative work, or in technology, or in business, or in anything else for that matter. All of our creative works are derived from something else, even if that something else is something that we ourselves created. Now, I have no science to back this up. This is just my gut feeling based on my own personal experiences, but my opinion is that even at our most uniquely innovative, creative state, at our best, our innovation is 10% max of the produced work. And my guess is that percentage may be very generous. And that being said, the lack of true innovation in the creative work doesn't take away from the work being good. In fact, it can even seem like it is innovative and new, even though it is derived from reproducing bits of other work, like with styles or techniques. Okay, and the second question I have is, if we rely on the reproduction of other people's creative work in our own, is that work that we're doing truly creative? Well, I would argue on this point that it all depends. On one hand, the amount of reproduction in a creative work may create issues. There are things like plagiarism that need to be accounted for. But even without direct copying of other people's works, we can still create works that are less original than we should be comfortable with. So when reproduction becomes too much, I don't think that it is truly creative. But that is a pretty fuzzy line. So it's hard to define a standard that would accommodate for every created work. Now, on the other hand, from a creative standpoint in general, and especially in artistically creative works, it's hard not to stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. We learn how to do a thing by copying someone else. And then we make it a little bit of our own. In music, there's a direct line of influence and reproduction between Robert Johnson, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Joe Bonamassa, and John Mayer. John Mayer may not sound exactly like Robert Johnson or any of the other guys for that matter, but there is so much that John does that is a partial or direct musical reproduction of these other great guitarists and many other players as well. And that type of influence is the same regardless of the artistic medium. So there is one final question that comes out of processing these questions about reproduction. Does it really matter? Does our reproduction of other people's creative works matter? Again, I think it depends. It depends on the scale of the reproduction. It also depends on the intent of the reproduction, whether or not the intention of the reproduction is to make money off of it. This is why we have copyright laws, to protect our creative works. With our God-given skills, talents, and abilities, we're created to create. And no, we may not create 100% new things like God does. Still, yet we have an undeniable desire to create. Through His grace, we create. For His glory, we create. We create even if we do reproduce bits of other work in the works that we create. The saying goes that there is nothing new under the sun, and there really isn't. Things that seem new at the time are usually just innovations of something that had been innovated from something else at some time in the past. That's how our minds work. We see something and we find a way to make it 1% different or better. Maybe by combining one pre-existing thing with another pre-existing thing, and the resulting new thing may just seem like a crazy innovation when really it isn't. The iPhone and the iPad seemed like crazy innovations at the time that they came out, and they were both significant innovations, but really they were still just combinations of existing technologies and ideas formed into something new and truly exciting. So even though we use reproduction to help us create new things, it doesn't mean that the creative works that come from that reproduction do not have value, that they don't have meaning. So it seems to be true that everything comes from something else in life. We can't get around that. But with that knowledge, we can lean in to what we do know to go, create, and be a blessing. You can support our channel by subscribing, hitting that bell icon to get notified when new content comes out, and liking our videos. If you'd like to consider supporting our team financially, there's a link in the video description with more details. Those things will help our channel for sure, but if you do nothing else, please spend some time in the comments of our videos encouraging one another to create, to help others create, and to help grow that creative nature within us all. Oh, and you can check out these videos too. Thanks. We'll see you again soon.